Skull Rock Podcast is brought to you by the generosity of the following companies. The Old Mill Press, publishing beautifully crafted books that illuminate our world. To learn more, visit theoldmillpress.com. And by listeners like you.
Hello, I'm Gunny Napper, United States Marine Corps retired, and you're listening to Skull Rock Podcast.
Skull Rock Podcast, where you hear the stories behind the adventures. With your hosts, Aljon Go and Dave Bossert.
Welcome to Skull Rock Podcast, the show about all things Disney and pop culture. Every week we take you behind the scenes of some of your favorite Disney films, theme park attractions, performances, books, music, as well as what's streaming, what's in theaters, and what's going on in this universe of entertainment. I'm Aljon Go, longtime Disney, Marvel, Star Wars fan and pop culturist, and you can email me, Aljon, A-L-J-O-N, at skullrockpodcast.com.
And I'm Dave Bossert, artist, filmmaker, author, and welcome to the Skull Rock Podcast. If you love Disney and pop culture, please subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcast. You can also like and follow us on Facebook, X, Instagram, and LinkedIn. And now we're on YouTube.
Yay.
You can also email me at dave@skullrockpodcast.com. Aljon, how are you this week?
Oh, I'm doing great, Dave. You know, storms have been rolling into Nashville. Power went out over here. Power went out at my show the other night, but
holy moly,
we're back. We're back, and we're good to go. So
awesome. Well, we've got a great show today. We've got Emmy-winning story artist Ken Bruce back for part 2, and we're going to really be talking about his new book, Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, Before the Birds Sang Words, by Ken Bruce, and the foreword was written by Brad Bird.
Nice.
So, and I have to say, it's an excellent book. I've read the book. It is absolutely fantastic. There is so much information in here. And I absolutely love it when somebody does a deep dive on one attraction, one thing, and gives us the whole story behind it. And Ken really did a fantastic job on this.
It's going to be one that's on my reading list for sure. I love the Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room a lot. I mean, I love it a lot. And I've been lucky enough to go see the Tiki Room in many different parks. Maybe not as many as you, Dave, but, I'm working on it. It's part of my Disney bucket list.
That's awesome. I think it's great, but it is a fantastic book. So we'll be talking about that with Ken shortly. So I'm looking forward to that. And other than that, let's just dive in.
Sure. Hey, real quick, we have this, just a couple episodes ago, we celebrated 200 episodes of Skull Rock Podcast, and Dave was generous enough to give away some digital copies and some physical copies to those living in the United States of our listeners and subscribers to our brand new YouTube. So we are going to announce the winners of that in next week's episode. So
the contest ends today.
Yes.
And next Monday, we will announce the 5 winners. Yeah. At which point they'll have to get us their contact information so that we could get them, hopefully, a copy of the book if they're in the U.S., or figure out how we're going to get them the digital copy if they're outside the U.S.
Absolutely. And once again, thank you for everybody subscribing. We do appreciate it. Don't forget, we are on YouTube. Link is in our show notes to subscribe to our podcast if you just stumbled upon us, and just every way to check out social media. Please go ahead and subscribe to that. And now let's go ahead and get into our picks of the week. Dave, what have you been watching this week?
Well, I have to really just, I've been watching a lot of stuff, Aljon. So I'm going to start out with a movie that dropped this past week on Netflix called The Union with Mark Wahlberg. And Mark Wahlberg plays a character named Mike, a down-to-earth construction worker who's thrust into the world of super spies and secret agents with his high school sweetheart, Roxanne, who recruits him on a high-stakes U.S. intelligence mission. This is This is kind of farcical in my mind, the premises, but I certainly like watching Mark Wahlberg and Haley Berry. This is just a sort of a procedural type of spy thriller, if you will. Nancy and I enjoyed it. I wouldn't say this is a great movie. It's got 44% on Rotten Tomatoes, 45% on Metacritic, and a 5.6 out of 10 on IMDb. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, it has a fantastic cast in it. Aside from Halle Berry and Mark Wahlberg, Dana Delaney's in it, Lorraine Bracco, J.K. Simmons, Mike Coulter, from Luke and from what's that Evil show?
Evil, yeah.
Yeah, Evil. Yeah. Okay. Coulter, and Jackie Earl Haley is in it, and he's a terrific actor. He's been in a lot of stuff. He was a child actor who kind of left Hollywood when the work dried up a little bit, and he moved back to his hometown in Texas. And for a while, he was like delivering pizzas and stuff, right? And then all of a sudden, he's had a resurgence in his career, and he's been working fairly steady. He's a terrific character actor. I really like seeing him on screen. So, this is, look, if you got nothing to do for a couple hours, watch this on Netflix. It's an okay movie.
Okay.
The other movie I watched was called Jackpot, which is a comedy action starring John Cena. And Aquafina.
Yeah.
And, I have to say they have chemistry, and there's some bust out loud funny moments, but this movie again is farcical. It's directed by Paul Feig, and he had done a television show called Welcome to Flatch. I think I talked about this a few years ago. And which is kind of like a documentary style type of show. There's like a documentary crew following people around this town of Flatch in Ohio, I think it was. Anyway, a lot of the cast members from that show are in this because, again, it's Paul Feig, including Sean William Scott. If you remember him from, the American Pie movies.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so he's in it. Machine Gun Kelly. There's a lot of very recognizable characters. Leslie David Baker from The Office is in it. Again, there's funny moments in this, but it's kind of a ridiculous movie in my mind.
It seems funny.
Yeah, so that's and that's on Amazon Prime. It's an MGM Studios film, which is owned by Amazon now. So I watched that, and then season 2 of a show. I think I spoke about this show a year or two ago, called Troppo. It's a drama, an Australian drama. And I watched season 1 again. I think it was back in 22. And season 2 has dropped. And I binge watched that. It's really, I think, a terrific show. Troppo, by the way, is slang in Australian for like crazy, mad, out of your mind, So Troppo is an eccentric private investigator with a criminal past, recruits a disgraced ex-cop to help solve the disappearance of a Korean tech pioneer in the wilds of far north Korea. Far north Queensland. That was the sort of the tagline for season 2. For season 1. So season 2 dropped. I'm not going to give it away, but really well done show. So check that out. It's available on Prime Video. And then a new show dropped on Apple Plus called Bad Monkey with Vince Vaughn.
Whoa.
And Vince Vaughn plays a former Miami Police Department member turned health inspector, Andrew Yancey, investigates a case involving a human arm. He navigates through eccentric characters and unexpected challenges, all while dealing with his own personal struggles. Look, if you like Vince Vaughn, this is sort of a black comedy crime drama. And it's set in the Florida Keys and Miami. And I really enjoyed there's only 2 episodes dropped this past week. I watched both of them, and I thought this was a really well done show, high quality production value, very funny. Vince Vaughn is in top form, very enjoyable show. So check that out on Apple Plus. And then, of course, I continue to watch Maine Cabin Masters. And there's no shortage of work for Maine-based builder Chase Morrell, whose specialty is renovating rustic cabins and camps all over the Pine Tree State. Working alongside his sister, brother-in-law, and best friend, Morrell contracts with clients to save and transform rundown cabins buried deep in Maine's remote woods, from century-old cottages to lakeside retreats in need of some major repair. Chase and his team give these dilapidated properties the revivals they have needed for decades. This is from the Magnolia Network. I think when I talked about this last time, I said I watched it on Hulu. Well, it's not only on Hulu, it's on Disney Plus. It's also on Max. Now, some of the channels have a certain number of episodes or seasons compared to others. So I think we exhausted the episodes on Hulu/Disney Plus, and now we switched over to Max, where we've got some later seasons that we're watching that aren't available on Hulu or Disney Plus. So terrific show. I'm going to be up in Maine, next month, Aljon, and I'm actually going to go over to their facility. And they have like a company store with merch. They have a restaurant, and apparently the day that I'm going to be able to go there, there's a tool festival going on. Yeah, so there's going to be like a big tool show at one of their facilities. So I'm going to check that out.
That sounds like fun, actually.
Yeah, I know. So that's what I've been watching. What have you been watching?
Oh, man. I haven't been watching a lot, Dave, because I've been woodshedding for all the emo songs I played over the weekend. So we played songs from the like of The Used and My Chemical Romance, Fall Out Boy, and Paramore. And it was just a lot of fun.
And so you get together with your band and practice.
Well, it's actually 30 plus of us, but it's a bunch of different musicians from Middle Tennessee, Nashville area. A lot of them are signed musicians and stuff. And we do these tribute nights. This is the thing about Nashville, which is great, is that you have a bunch of great musicians that hang out with each other. And when you're not on the road, you just want to play music together. So it's a mashup of all these great bands and different front people. And we just take the stage and we get a list of songs. Here are the songs that we're going to do. And we'll get together one night at SIR, which is a big rehearsal studio here in town where all the bands practice. And we'll just go on stage and we'll knock it out. And of course we did. So,
and do you kind of like rotate the number of people on stage depending on the songs?
Exactly. So every song there'll be a new group of people up. So I get to play and have, good times with a bunch of different people. But sometimes, there are some band members that we do enjoy playing together a lot. And I enjoy that time. I'm not going to name names because some of them are bands that people probably know here, but we just have a good time. And so, when I have pictures and video, I'll put them up on my Instagram at Aljon Go on Instagram, and cool. You get to check it out. But we'll see. We had emo night, and then 2000s rock night, and we do 80s night where we'll do a bunch of hair metal and Pat Benatar and stuff like that. So it's always fun.
Nice.
But I did read a book, so I'm going through a book right now. And I'll make mention of it. I haven't finished it yet because it is a big read, Dave. It's called...
that looks like a dictionary.
It is. It's called Tone Chaser, and it is understanding Edward with my 26-year journey with Edward Van Halen by Steve Rosen. And
Wow.
Steve Rosen is a great writer. He's written for a lot of different guitar magazines and such, and he's a great musician himself. And he sent me a copy of this thick book. And this conversation over 26 years that Steve had, this book reads like an interview. And it's pretty cool because you get to hear in, Ed's words, of course, retold, or I guess put to paper here by Steve, and he recounts a lot of the stuff about his band and touring, and just the little anecdotes about guitar and what makes his playing unique, and what kind of course, it's called Tone Chaser, so it's about a lot of the gear and different things like that. So if you're a guitar player and you're obsessed, much like I am, about Eddie Van Halen, because he literally is the man that launched a million ships in terms of how people perceive and enjoy guitar today. He is that influential, much like Jimi Hendrix was influential in the 60s. Eddie Van Halen was influential in the late 70s and into the early 80s. And the ripples of the way he plays and how he plays and the sounds that he got, those early Van Halen records, sent shockwaves throughout the industry and are still being felt today. And that's how influential Eddie Van Halen is.
Wow.
To guitar.
And Eddie Van Halen's son is an accomplished guitarist himself, isn't he?
100%. He's a great musician. He plays guitar, bass, piano, drums. He's super talented. His new record, he's got, I believe it's his third record, is incredible. And if you like alternative rock, and rock and roll, just a good hard rock, he's a very, very accomplished and great songwriter and singer and performer with his band. And, it's great that he was able to spend that time, with his family, his uncle Al, Alex Van Halen, and of course, Edward Van Halen before he passed. And, was able to kind of take on the family business, as it were. But this is it's a thick book. It's a great read, though. I haven't finished all of it, but I am great. I will read to you a quote from it. And this is from Eddie Trunk. Eddie Trunk is a prolific DJ. He's on Sirius XM with you, Dave, with Trunk Nation. But he says, Tone Chaser is a fascinating depth look at one of our greatest guitar icons. Through the many interviews Steve Rosen has conducted with Eddie Van Halen, you get incredible insights in the dynamics and tone of one of rock's greatest bands, and a rare unfiltered look at its leader at various times in the band's.
Nice.
So that's from Eddie Trunk, and there's others from Gary Holt and Warren DeMartini and Christopher Scapoletti from Guitar Player Magazine and Steve Vai. Just so many great quotes in here. But yeah, it's a great compilation. And so check out Tone Chaser. It's available now. And if you're into Eddie Van Halen and guitar, you're going to love it. And now let's get into our stories.
Skull Rock Podcast. This week in Disney and pop culture.
All right, Dave. Box office milestones. Deadpool and Wolverine becomes the top grossing rated R film of all time. No kidding. Of course, it's deserved. It's deserved all the flowers it gets, I think.
Yeah, again, I'm going to be curious to see if we start to see a lot more in the way of R-rated movies coming out of Marvel.
I think we are. I mean, I think there is a need for it, and the comic book genre, it's dark. It can be dark. It can be violent, and I think there's a need for it. I don't think there's any reason why they wouldn't. So make more. Unfortunately, some company that's not making all that money is Paramount. You sent me this link from Hollywood Reporter, Dave, that the CEO is telling staff it's time to go. 15% of the employees of Paramount is going to be laid off, and it's going to happen in 3 phases with 90% done by the end of September. It's the end, isn't it?
Well, this is one of those moments where, there's just a major reorg that's going on over at Paramount. Paramount's been in play for the last year or so with, the Redstone family selling it, and it looks like Skydance is going to take it on. It's, this is always a sad moment with these studios, because when they do these kinds of cuts, they're usually cutting too much, too deep, And there are things that, legacy things that get lost in the shuffle when these layoffs happen, but it is what it is.
I'm curious to your thoughts, Dave, because, the whole, Warner Brothers over the past couple of weeks had basically, their stock had fallen tremendously. It's like they lost $9 billion in worth or something of that nature. Yeah. And network TV is kind of going down the tubes because of streaming services are kind of collapsing upon itself. I mean, does that mean that the entertainment industry is just super top heavy, that they are just trying to cut so many redundant jobs as they try to consolidate? Is it just too top heavy? What's going on here, Dave?
There's a complete sea change going on in the entertainment industry, Aljon. And I will say, from my perspective, I know the animation industry is in a depression. Mm-hmm. Okay. Because we're going to talk about it shortly, but there's a lot of people out of work in animation, but I think it's broader in the entertainment industry, because the streaming services are trying to find their sea legs to where they can be profitable. And there's just a lot of change happening, and there's going to continue to be change and continue to be a shakeout in the industry. So, again, major changes happening, and it's going to be rippling for another year or two, in my mind.
Too much of a good thing when you devalue art, like this. Oh, I don't even know what to say. It's just like,
but to your point though, you asked me if it's too top heavy. The industry's always too top heavy. Yeah. There's way too many executives running around, and a lot of the executives that come in might be good managers, but as soon as I saw this all the time at Disney, you get a manager that comes in, who's a good operations person, but as soon as they're at Disney, they have to become creative, and there's just too many cooks in the kitchen, as I have always said. And at some point, they're going to, be able to streamline further and have more efficient operations so that they can actually make a profit. The unfortunate thing is that the creative side always gets hit first, as opposed to all of these managers running around.
Right. We'll have more as it unfolds. Dave, the drama of the Animation Guild and the studios do not reach an agreement. They add negotiating dates in September. The union, which is polarized, tackling AI and outsourcing, in talks with Hollywood companies, previously set a Friday deadline to conclude talks with the Alliance of Motion Picture and Television Producers. That's a lot of animation workers, over 5,000 workers going on strike and trying to strike a deal.
Well, they haven't authorized a strike yet.
Oh, they haven't. Okay.
But they last week they were at the bargaining table to come up with a new contract. Okay. They haven't reached an agreement. They reached agreements on some points, but they haven't reached agreements on other things like AI. And so they're going to go back to the bargaining table in September to see if they can reach a deal. Now, there's about, like they said in the article, about 5,000 people in the animation union. And of the 5,000 people, there's like 1,600 to 1,700 that are out of work. Mm. They're not working. Mm. They've been laid off, whatever. So that's 30%. That constitutes a depression to me.
Yeah.
If you look at it, like if the economy was down 30% and unemployment was at 25, during the Great Depression, Aljon, unemployment was at like 25% in the United States, right? So you got 30% of the union membership are not working, have been laid off from jobs. I mean, that to me is grim. Is this grim? And it's what I've been hearing from so many people in the industry for the last, 6-8 months.
Is this just a leveling out post-COVID? Because there was so much content being produced by animators and studios to kind of feed the need of people staying home, and this is just kind of fallout from kind of a return to normalcy. Is this possible?
I'm sure that there's a little of that coming into play, but I also think, how many big budget animated films over the last 2 years have gone out and fallen on their face.
Wow.
Just look at Disney. You had Strange World, and last year you had Wish. I mean, that's like $500 million flushed down the toilet. Those movies did nothing at the box office. And you hear people from the studio side say, well, that was a misfire. A misfire. Wow.
It's more than a misfire.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, they're spending way too much money on those films anyway.
Wow.
They're not working efficiently, and you're not seeing the money on the screen.
Yeah. Films by committee. You got to love that.
There you go.
Beetlejuice is not a film by committee. It's on track for a huge September opening with a possible of $80 million as Tim Burton's sequel is poised to be one of the biggest domestic openings ever for the month of September.
Well, I think this is going to be fantastic, don't you, Aljon?
Yeah, we're getting our tickets, Dave. We're going to go.
Yeah, I mean, I've seen the trailers for this movie. They're bringing back most of the original cast. It looks great. It looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. I love the fact that Tim has put a little stop motion into the film. Mm-hmm. It's fabulous.
Yeah, I love it, and I love the cast. What can I say? I want to get back into this world in a big way. Beetlejuice is going to be a great film. It seemingly is going to be, and I'm looking forward to checking it out when it launches into theaters in September. Where is the launch date? It's like you read this whole article on
it's early September.
Is it early
and
September?
I'll tell you right now, to me, they're saying huge 80 million box office debut. I think it'll be more than that.
Probably so. September 6th is when it drops.
Yeah.
So looking forward to that. James Wan, one of my favorite directors, looking to take Creature from the Black Lagoon in remaking it. Jack Arnold, who directed many sci-fi classics in the 50s, helmed the 54 Universal movie that was released in 3D. Dave, it's a classic, Creature from the Black Lagoon.
It really is a classic. I'm surprised it really hasn't been redone up until this point. I'm glad that somebody's going to put a contemporary take on it.
Yeah, and well, you can't get much more contemporary than James Wan. I mean, James Wan, known for, of course, doing the Saw movies, the Conjuring horror franchise as well, is going to tackle this, and it looks like it looks great. I can't wait. This is going to be a lot of fun. Tulsa King, season 2, my boy Sylvester Stallone back in action in this new trailer. Looking forward to this, Dave. I mean, I'm excited. Of course, the new trailer has a new song, Get By, from country star Jelly Roll. Man, Jelly Roll making all kinds of waves in the music industry.
And Jelly Roll's going to be in Tulsa King. He's got a cameo.
It's going to be great. I like the series. I've only seen a couple episodes of the first season. I want to see more. With Sly, what else?
I've watched the entire first season. I can't wait to see season 2. Looks great.
Excellent. All right, Dave. Go ahead, hit the sounder. What is it this time?
Obituary roll call.
Okay, that's no sound effect for me. We have a few in the roll call this week, unfortunately.
Yeah, they were dropping like flies this past week.
Yeah. So here's Kim Kana, stuntman who starred in Danger Island and doubled for Charles Bronson, dies at the age of 94. This guy has been a mainstay stuntman for decades in the system. He's been in all kinds of different movies. Of course, he's a stuntman, so you may not know a lot of the things that he's done, but you know him because he's performed as a stunt person and coordinator or acted in Cool Hand Luke, Planet of the Apes, Patton, Soylent Green, MacArthur, Jeepers Creepers. So all kinds of films over a course of 30, 40 years, Dave. He's been in everything.
Yeah, I think the stuntmen and women in the industry are going to start to come into their own. There's a push to get a stunt Academy Award for best stunts.
Yeah.
I think that's well deserved, and I hope that happens soon with the Academy. But I think it's always great to put a spotlight on some of these folks that are, quote, below the line. So people that listen might not be familiar with some of their names, but certainly have contributed greatly to the industry.
Yeah, the fall guys and the fall men and fall women, they need to be recognized. It's high time for the Academy to do that and recognize these stunt people. Now, this is above line. This is legendary. Gina Rowlands, unparalleled excellence. Of course, she's an amazing actress, dies at the age of 94. Oscar nominations for Woman Under the Influence, Gloria, and Wonderful in the Notebook. Of course, she changed the course of American independent film with her late husband, John Cassavetes. Man, what can I say? I mean, legendary Gina Rowlands.
Yeah, she's, I think, somebody who has just been in the industry for a very long time. She has, she's a great actress. What else can you say about her? She never rose to the level of stardom of some, but she's just was consistent and always there, and just a great presence on screen. And what a wonderful life, 94.
Absolutely. A lot of people will remember her her roles in many films. Of course, she's been in directed. John Cassavetes directed his wife in A Woman Under the Influence and Gloria, as well as In the Shadows, Child is Waiting, Faces. A lot of those films happening in the 60s and 70s. But unfortunately, she's been battling Alzheimer's 2019. It's always
such
tragic.
a shame.
Yes. One of my favorite guys on TV, especially daytime, Peter Marshall, host of the Hollywood Squares and so many more game shows, dies at the age of 98. Before working on game show, he was an Emmy Award winner, singer, straight man in popular comedy act, leading man on Broadway. What a killer smile and a great voice. Peter Marshall, 98.
Yeah, I read his obituary. He's a funny guy because he said the Hollywood Squares was the best job he ever had. He only had to work one day a week. They filmed 5 episodes in a day. And that was it. He worked one day a week. He said when he took it on, they didn't think it was going to last, and he wound up doing like 6,000 episodes.
That's amazing, Dave.
Yeah.
It's amazing.
It's crazy.
Well, it's a legendary game. I grew up watching him like many of you, listening to this podcast, but I remember watching Peter Marshall and Hollywood Squares and the other different game shows he's hosted through the years with my grandparents when I was in Seattle growing up, and it was just so much fun to watch. And I still get giddy when I see him on the game show channels and on YouTube. It's always fun to see those blooper reels of game shows. So that's amazing. Rest in peace. Bob Weatherwax, and this is a name that I remember seeing growing up. Lassie's trainer dies at the age of 83.
Now this is the son of the original trainer.
Is that right?
Yes. So
Okay.
this is the original trainer who I think it was 1947.
Yeah.
The first Lassie film.
Yes.
Right. He so this is the son of the original Lassie trainer.
And he took on the family business.
He took on the family business. Yeah.
That's amazing. I mean, Lassie's such a classic. I mean, just the theme song just makes me also relive a lot of childhood memories. I'm sure
What is it, Lassie? What is it, Lassie? Timmy fell down the well.
I think Lassie's trying to tell us something. But once again, I mean, Bob Weatherwax taking on the family business, of course, Hollywood dog trainer, animal trainer. That is amazing. And of course, he also had a cousin, Ken Weatherwax, who played Pugsley Adams in the Addams Family. So
yes, yeah, so it's a big entertainment family.
It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Last but not least, Pat Shea, writer in All in the Family and Archie Bunker's Place, dies at the age of 93. Wow, man, she's worked on so many shows, The Jeffersons, Gloria, and other Norman Lear shows. Her husband was was DGA luminary Jack Shea. Man. What
and when you see her face, you go, "Oh, I remember seeing her in a million things."
Sure,
she was a great character actress.
She She was a Norman Lear regular who co-wrote the 79 series finale of All in the Family, which is a classic. Co-created 2 spinoffs of the fabled sitcom Archie Bunker's Place and Gloria. She died at 93 of natural causes at Sherman Oaks. What a great, those shows are so iconic. These shows today, a lot of these sitcoms and these sitcoms don't hold a candle to the brilliance of those Norman Lear shows. The Jeffersons or Silver Spoon, Sanford and Son, the stuff that she worked on is absolutely amazing. And to this day, even in the heat of the night, a drama with Carol O'Connor from All in the Family, she wrote. These are amazing shows.
Yeah. And, all of these folks leave behind a body of work that will live on into the future, for future generations to enjoy.
Absolutely. So if you're in the entertainment writer, if you're a writer, go back and revisit these episodes that she wrote because they are brilliant. And hopefully you'll learn a thing or two and get entertained along the way.
There you go.
Let's sit back and relax and get into our meat and potatoes of the show. Part 2 of Emmy-winning story artist Ken Bruce right here on Skull Rock Podcast.
Let's do it.
Skull Rock Podcast. Interview time.
Well, Aljon, here we are. We're back again. We got part 2 with animation artist and really story artist, Ken Bruce. Ken, welcome back to welcome back to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Thrilled to be back.
I really enjoyed. See, our audience is thrilled too.
They sound like a bunch of barking dogs.
They could very well be. I really enjoyed our conversation last week, Ken. I really, I learned some things about you and about your career. But this all started because we were going to bring you on to talk about a book you wrote. So not only are you an animation artist and a story artist, you are a bona fide author of Before the Birds Sang Words, which is all about the Tiki Room, Walt Disney's Tiki Room. And I'm going to tell our audience that you and I had lunch, I don't know, a month or so ago, and you gave me a copy of the book, which I would have happily purchased because
Oh, please, you got a free one.
No, but I absolutely have been enjoying it. And I'll say up front, I'm not done yet. I'm savoring it. I've read about a third of the book, and it's a hefty, I don't know how many pages it is, 500 pages?
No.
It's 396 pages. Okay.
Well, some of that is, bibliography.
Yes, but still, it is a very fascinating story, and I'm learning some things I didn't know.
Which feels really good because I didn't want to. Yeah, I felt like there was a story to be told, much of it that hadn't really been put out there.
Yeah, and I really appreciate it. But let me start by saying, how did this book come about? Why did you decide to say I need to write this book?
That is the $1 million question, because to write a book like that, you better have fire under your hiney because you'll never finish it. Always loved Disneyland, always loved that attraction, always had a respect for it that I didn't feel others maybe shared or and that they should share. Always wanted to read a book about that. Again, that no one had ever written. So, and also to remind people the importance of that attraction. The Enchanted Tiki Room is, there are other bigger, more crazy, more technologically advanced shows at Disneyland for sure. But we have to remember that the Tiki Room is probably the most consequential attraction at Disneyland. Thank God it's still there, because it really started everything. It changed the tone of Disneyland, and it was the first animatronic show there. So I felt like I had a story to tell, to pay due respect to an attraction that I think a lot of people might look past in 2024. So that's one of the reasons. I've shared this story before, but the idea that I've been in the Tiki room before and seen people leave mid-show always annoyed me. I always felt like I wanted to run after them, grab them, sit them down, and say, "Let me tell you a story." That by the end of it, they would be like, "Oh, I better go back," and they would actually pay attention. It's an important story to be told because the Tiki Room changed everything on so many different levels.
So let's step back for a second because you said a couple of things that I think are worth expanding upon. It was the first animatronic show.
Yeah, we can go down the list. So it was the first audio animatronics presentation at Disneyland, that being a push-button musical review that was completely automated in a theme park setting that was completely new. It was the first show at Disneyland that Walt put his name on for various reasons, not the least of which it was his own money. It was the first show that had its own. Seems like a small thing, but it is a big thing. The first ticketed show at Disneyland that had its own theme song. The idea of an actual song being written for an amusement venue, ridiculous, by the Sherman Brothers, no less. It was the first. It was one of the most, factoring in the defense. Our national defense. Research and development that was poured into it as well. Probably the most expensive theme park attraction to date, and one of a kind. To see that show back in '63 forward, you were the lucky few to see something this new and revolutionary. It, in the context of its day, we forget it blew people's minds.
And when you say Walt put his name on this, can you elaborate on that aspect of it? Was this something that Walt said, "I own this and I'm leasing it to Disneyland," or how did all that work? Because there was all kinds of companies being set up in the 50s that surround Disneyland. You had Retlaw that owned the transportation. You had WED that was designing the park. So
at the time, WED, Walter Elias Disney, was Walt's own company. Walt Disney Productions, the studio, was not his own company. It had shareholders, and board members. WED was his own company, so he owned it outright. And the Enchanted Tiki Room came from that a small fledgling company. So Walt's money was in it, but his name, yes, of course, Walt Disney Presents shows up on every movie that came out of the studio. But this was different. Walt's involvement with the Tiki Room, unlike virtually everything that was happening at the studio, was very, very in-depth, hands-on from beginning to end. He loved this thing and its sensibilities and its humor. And the very concept of it is all him. And in fact, a huge chunk of my book is an argument alongside that very idea. The idea that this is, if you really want to know Walt, go see the Enchanted Tiki Room. It's all him. So his name on it is, among other things, because it was such a personal project to him. And this was a last minute decision. The idea of putting Walt's name on it happened like a week before the show opened. Very, very last minute. And that too related to the fact that Walt's name began to showed up on New York, would show up at the New York World's Fair as well on the various projects there. So Walt being so very, very personally involved in that show, his name recognition means means a lot.
And when you talk a lot about at least in the portion of the book I've read so far, you talk about Walt collecting little automated. I don't want to call them toys because they're beyond toys.
Yeah, they were mechanical.
They're mechanical curiosities.
Mechanical toys. No, from Walt's love of miniatures and mechanical wind-up toys goes back to his formative years as a child. He his father didn't believe in the value of toys, didn't feel that they were necessary for a kid's growth. But Walt, like so many of us, was a toy nerd. And he would, on his paper route, see toys scattered about some strange person's home, and he would play with those toys till the sun came up, and then dash back onto the newspaper route. So his love of toys, mechanical toys and miniatures, is a thread that goes throughout his entire young adult life and adult life. So, tracing that path and then getting to the Tiki Room the Tiki Room is kind of like a Toy Story come to life. That is Walt in heaven. That is Walt with the biggest smile on his face, that he was able to create an experience that was basically a puppet show where the puppets didn't have strings, as delightful to him as all get out. So that's one of the reasons I spend a nice chunk of the book discussing Walt's passion for these sorts of things, because they all kind of trace their way through the creation of Disneyland and then right up until right through the Enchanted Tiki Room.
And the Tiki Room obviously is still there at Disneyland.
Yes.
What do you think is the draw for guests? And do you think that the company will ever go in and make any radical changes to it? Well,
and that's part of the reason for the book too, is a hope that they recognize they should, hands off on that one. There's a saying that a lot of Imagineers bandy about, and it's true. Disneyland needs to remain relevant. So they would always say Disneyland is not a museum. And Walt always said he wanted to keep building onto the park. And yet, the Enchanted Tiki Room has really earned its place in a museum. It is that important. It is a pop culture masterwork, done at a specific time and a specific place that if it were gone, it would be a disgrace. It would be like destroying a piece of art. Why is it still there? Because on many levels it still works. It still is charming. Yes, it's quaint. Yes, it's not Pirates of the Caribbean or Rise of the Resistance, but it's still charming to this day. And it's also relevant. I think it's fine. Gosh, it's just important. And I hope that I'm guessing that a lot of people still go because it is nostalgic. It is quaint in a good way. It is a taste at another time that is still appealing. Yeah. It did go out of style for a good chunk of time, which I write about in the book as well. But then crawled back with this new appreciation for the tiki culture, the tiki pop culture, for all things mid-century, for its kooky place in time, and for people who had a renewed respect for what Walt was up to back then. Do you feel like the companies embraced that tiki culture? They did. They might. Hopefully, they are not falling out of grace. But yeah, so they did. Come the 50th anniversary of Disneyland. I think it was Michael Eisner who recognized. I'm sure he was told that the Tiki Room was ripe for ripe to be cleaned up because of the embrace of the funky mid-century culture that was coming through in all sorts of different ways. Yeah. SpongeBob and Pee-wee's Playhouse and like B-52s and there was this huge love of all the things that were uncool once upon a time, and so all of a sudden the Tiki Room had new cachet and a new hipness that had been forgotten. So it had its renaissance, yeah, and maybe it's due for another one.
And do you feel like they go in and do refurbishings on other attractions, like, for instance, It's a Small World. They did a big refurbishing, and there was a dust up with fans who were outraged that they were adding some of the Fab Five characters in.
That one I'm still troubled by, and I certainly hope nothing like that happens with the Tiki Room. There was a complete redo of the show in Florida. So it was the original show in Florida, and then they changed it over to a much more cynical version that did not last very long, called Under New Management. And I write about that in the book, and it was awful. And luckily, it did not have a very long shelf life because they later reinstated the original show, as they should. The original show,
but they reinstated the original show, but with updated technology on the
a little bit. It's still basically the same techno. Okay. Yeah, the birds aren't doing any new moves that they weren't incapable of, that they weren't capable of previously. It's still,
but they're doing smoother. It's a smoother move.
Not necessarily. No, I think it's. Okay. I still think it's pneumatic in Florida as well. Maybe no. I think maybe in Florida they are electric motors now. I think in California it's still pneumatics, which means air pressure,
right?
That triggers movement. I'm not quite sure. But yeah, it's still it's still the same show. It's still the same show. Yeah.
And when was the last time you saw the Tiki Room show?
Shortly after my book came out, I was able to catch one of the later evening shows where it was just me, a friend, and 3 other people in the room, which was great. And I was able to talk to some of the people there. So yeah, not too long ago. It's a quaint show. Quaint is a polite way of saying, it's old school. It's old school, and the actual show itself, beyond the fact that it in its day was a technological marvel, which it really, really was. It has nods to, vaudeville and burlesque and old school musical reviews that Walt was very, very familiar with. All the way back to, his childhood. So even though it is a very surreal, Monty Python-esque, Daffy kind of show that has a tiki overlay, if you really, really look, it's Walt era musical review.
Yeah. I mean, not unlike the Horseshoe Review.
Yeah, and those two shows, though seemingly thematically opposite, are far, far more alike. Far more alike than different.
Yeah,
and in fact, it was the very popularity of the Horseshoe Review that helped to spawn the Tiki Room, because Walt was frustrated with the fact that this amazing show that everybody loved had only a limited amount of people could see it every day.
Right.
Well, with the Tiki Room, you got 3 shows every hour, as opposed to the 3 shows every day that they do with the Horseshoe.
Yeah.
So he was delighted that kind of show could grab more people throughout the day.
Yeah. What was go ahead.
And just again, he called many of the same people that were associated with the Horseshoe Review to shape the writing, among other things, of the Tiki Room.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What was the most difficult part of doing the book on the research side?
Just writing it. I'm a wordsmith, so it's really impossible for me to. It's not possible. It's difficult for me to write God, this sounds. I just want it. Writing it. There are times where I was, had my laptop open on an 8-hour flight from X to Z, and my job was I have to take this idea in the book and link it to this idea with a sentence or two. And by 8 hours of hard work, I might be 2/3 done with those 2 sentences. Writing a book is hard. You know that, Dave.
I enjoy it though. It's hard work, but I like it.
Oh no, don't get me wrong. I enjoy it. If I didn't enjoy it, I wouldn't have done it. But it's a lot of crafting. But no, on your more important point.
Yeah,
research,
like
you know what? Research. Research is not. It's not an exact science.
Right.
You find your material everywhere and any way you can find it. Sometimes you find it just by listening to a conversation. It's that funky, on a bus or a train. Overhearing debates from people on Facebook, newspapers, magazines, interviews, private family archives. It is so.
So it's a lot of detective work, and you're out there following little crumbs to different things.
So to formulate a story, that does feel like it has a beginning, middle, and end based on history is a really tough go, a delightful go. It's just hard work. Because it's one thing to write a story where you've got all your pinned cards up and you're just writing dialogue, but I'm formulating a story out of research. But I'm going to keep going. There are so many mysteries. Again, one of the reasons I wrote the book is because I had a lot of questions that I still had not answers to. Walt and his cronies were able to dip into our Defense Department's used equipment to manage the show, manage the animation on the show. How did that actually work? When Walt always talked about, and we used, the same technology that launched missiles into blah, what is he actually talking about? So the digging into that was rough and fun. And then to find the answer, delightful, a lot of aha moments. Difficult. One of the most I'm just going to follow up on the next question. One of the most joyful things about writing that book is debunking mythology. The mythology that surrounds the Disney company is profound and troubling.
Lots of urban legends.
It's just so much misinformation, usually based on magical, adorable stories that fans eat up. But then they're retold so many times that they just become fact, and they're all kind of baloney. And that's one of the reasons I wrote the book too. Is the truth, the real nitty gritty process of building anything is messy and not magical. And it's a much more interesting story. What
was one of the biggest myths that you?
Oh, there were so many of them. Yeah, but the biggest myth is that story that they keep telling, and I've noticed they've kind of backed off on it a little. Is that Walt goes to New Orleans and picks up a 19th century style mechanical bird, and from there, the Tiki Room just comes to be. No, that's not the truth of the matter at all. It's not even close, for various reasons. Walt just loved mechanical toys of all types. So once he had his own personal project, it was called Disneylandia. It was going to be a bunch of traveling dioramas. One of the dioramas was going to feature a little tiny mechanical man. And once he brought his animation people in / people that were in animation but were also fans of mechanical toys as well and knew how to build them. So he would call these people out and he'd just drag his bird out and say, hey, take a look at this. I bought this once upon a time. You can take it apart, see how it works, and maybe it'll help you. And by the way, I think you guys can do better because this is really old. That's another myth too about the bird that he bought. It probably wasn't an antique. The company that made it was, he started in 1870s. But they were making those birds through the 1960s. So Walt probably bought a brand new mechanical Bantam's bird from an antique shop. He bought more than one. He bought many. So that's one of the myths that get started about animatronics and here's the bird that inspired animatronics, kind of, but no, and certainly didn't inspire the Tiki Room.
Yeah. And are there any other myths that drove you nuts that you wanted to debunk?
Oh, let me see another one. Okay, after the Tiki Room opened, the people that saw it loved it. They handed out cards to everybody and said, "What do you think of it?" And of course, it was like, "This thing is great." But one person wrote, "Hey, I love the show, but you might want to have a bird outside that tells people what the heck this thing is." And just like 2 days later, they were recording Wally Bogue for the quote unquote Barker bird, a new bird that they would put outside that would tell everybody, like a carnival barker would do, to come to the Tiki Room. The myth was it wasn't there for very long because it caused a traffic jam. That story's been told so often, it's now apparently truth. Could not be farther from the truth.
What was the real story?
The real story is, they put a Barker bird out there, but he was a maintenance nightmare. Now, if he was if he was causing a traffic jam and the traffic jam was a problem, you would take him down after what? A week, 2 weeks, 6 months? No, he was there for 6 years. He was a maintenance nightmare. So he got,
because he was exposed to the elements.
He was exposed to the elements, and I've told this story too. You have to remember too, rain, heat, humidity, and even worse, smog. 1960s Disneyland, smog. Like you are not even, you can't even begin to fathom. Like, it was brown air at Disneyland all the time. So he was hoisted high. So every time they had to fix him, he had to, get a ladder out. If he wasn't working, he was bad show. So, there are pictures of when it rained, they would just put an umbrella over him. Constant rotation of the bird. So one day he had green feathers, another day he had red. Some day he had a hat on, sometimes he didn't. They switched out. They switched out his structure instead of to sort of metal. The inner birds, the birds inside that are protected, don't have the strong parts that he did. So after 6 years, they removed him, but not because of a traffic jam, because it was, one, people knew what the show was by then. Number two, maintenance nightmare. And number three, he was also annoying. About 6 minutes into his run, the cast members were like, "This thing is driving me nuts." That talk that he does on a loop all day long.
Now, I think for our listeners, I think it would be interesting to know that, the show, which is still running, was there any point throughout the decades that it's been there where somebody said, "Nah, we're going to take this out. We need to put."
There were times very close to when it was going to be switched out for something different too. Okay, so this is weird. It was a time when Bette Midler was all the rage at the Disney company. She was a hit in every movie that Touchstone was creating. People loved Bette Midler. She was the it girl, and they were going to make a show where she starred in it as one of the birds, and also So there's another show. There's another show. But anyway, it was going to be where she's one of the MCs, and it was going to be kind of this weird, surreal, cabaret style show. Luckily, they didn't do that, because then they were beginning to think, "Oh, Lion King is a big deal now, so we're going to do a Lion King themed show inside the Tiki Room." And then that quickly got nixed when they realized, we have a fountain, we could put an animatronic Simba on, but once we do that, there's not much room for anything else. So they were going to do a lot, and then Animal Kingdom was signed off on, and then we got an entire land and an entire large auditorium for another show. So it just sort of didn't happen by happenstance. And then again, luckily, the Tiki culture became, was seeing a renewed sense of love. So come the 50th, they rehabbed the show to its original. Well, it rehabbed it because it was falling apart, and they did cut a number out of it, the Baccarol, which was the second song in, but originally for the longest time was going to be the first.
Why did they cut it?
Because it slowed the show down. So it's a great story. You have to remember that for most of the Tiki Room's creative, much of the time they were building it, it was planned to be a restaurant. And it was always just going to be a simple, the birds come to life as you're eating, and tweet back and forth to each other, and then some other numbers unfold. This was before the opening enchanted, in the Tiki 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 Room song. So the lights would dim. This Italian number called the Baccarol, which was from Tales of Hoffmann, would begin, and the birds in darkness would slowly come to life as this beautiful melody unspooled. Then, when it was decided to nix the restaurant idea, they put in the introductory song, which told everybody what the heck this show was, that the Shermans wrote, because before it wasn't a show, it was just a happening, just a weird, surreal happening. So then that song came in, but then it was followed by what felt like a downer. And even back then, in 1963, they knew that following this very upbeat song by the Shermans with a very downbeat song in the dark with the fountain rippling was kind of boring. Like John Hench was like, John Hench was one of the designers. He was like, he didn't mince words. He just hated that song, hated it, but it remained in there forever. It's still, if you think about it, a lovely way to open the show. It is a perfectly valid way to open the show. It is an absolutely ravishing and beautiful number, but it's a letdown tonally once the Tiki Room song came in. So it remained in there forever, but once the 50th came around, they're like, no, time to get rid of it. And they got rid of a couple stanzas, a couple of the choruses from the original Tiki Room song, and nipped some jokes in the butt. So I don't know, they removed a few minutes from it. So it's a sprightly show now. With today's technology, there's no reason they can't bring that second number back and dress it up with some effects that bring it into the 21st century.
Yes.
22nd century. What is our century?
We're in the 21st century.
Okay.
I do want to just let our listeners know we are talking with Ken Bruce, animation artist, story artist, and author of Before the Birds Sang Words, all about Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. And
yay.
Yes, I'm loving this book, by the way, and I'm going to tell our listeners you will absolutely eat this book up. There is a lot of information packed in this book, and I have look. I'm a third of the way into it, and I it's a page turner for me.
Well, apparently not. If you're only a third in.
Well, no, I mean, come on, do you know how many books I've got stacked up in my office?
Yeah. I can see them.
I mean, honestly, but I started reading this last week because I was traveling, and I just can't put it down. So I'll have it finished next week, Ken. I was hoping.
I've been very humbled. That's very nice of you. I was very humbled. I always thought, if 12 people read the book, I'll be delighted. But people seem to be really liking it. I know one Imagineer who reached out to me, well, several, but one said, Ken, this is the best book that's ever been written about our company. And I was like, really? Okay. Wow.
It really is very, very good.
And several post-book publishing reviews have spotted something that I never, ever thought of or intended, but I guess it's just sort of happened organically, which is they complimented the book because they basically have said, and this is from more than one person, and I'm generally a humble person, so I feel icky just tooting my own horn, but it was still just such a really great compliment. They said this is the best book they've read on Walt's creative process, or the creative process in general. I've gotten that from a handful of people.
Yes.
And one person argued that it was because I am myself a creative person, so I kind of have that mindset. I know the head of someone who's trying to create something And I know the mindset of someone who's passionate about something.
I tend to agree with that. I think that, as artists that were steeped in this business,
Yes.
I think it gives us a very different perspective on the process and the material than the average bear out there.
The creative process is messy, but it's driven by passion and our own very unique sensibilities and our pasts. So without even knowing it, apparently I got in Walt's head and sort of, and that feels good because I do feel like I was able to, and championed that very messy creative process and Walt's passions that fueled it. Yeah. So that felt really, really good.
Oh, and listen, I would take it a step further and say you've written some very wonderful prose in this book. It is a beautifully written book, and that's part of the joy of reading it is that it is written so well.
Thank you. That's the hard process of telling a story. I'm a storyteller, so I found this to be a good story, and I also kind of felt like as I lived through it, it felt like there were times where there was a movie in it, a movie playing out because to be that fly on the wall and to see people bouncing off of each other and again, you have to remember everybody associated with this project was doing something they had never, ever done before. It was wacky. We're going to do a restaurant where a bunch of birds and tikis and flowers put on a show. Well, excuse me, what? And they did.
It's the story of this company. It's the story of this company to do something that, that's just like out of left field.
Yeah. I hope that I hope that they continue to do that. That was, Walt was sure that they could do this, and yet nobody from day one knew how to even begin. But with Walt's blessing, they moved forward. These were
trial and error.
These were not animatronics pros. This was a whole new idea.
Yeah.
He was like, who do I call? Well, there's this one guy, Waithel Rogers, an animator. When I visit him, I see toys, mechanical toys that he's either bought or built himself. He'll be good. Call him in. He can do this room, 2,600 square foot room with a bunch of animated birds. And of course, Waithel is like, what, why, me, what, me, what, how, like, okay. And they march forward completely bewildered about how they begin. And they go ahead and just do it. They pulled a rabbit out of a hat.
They absolutely did, and you really chronicled this incredibly well, Ken. I really am absolutely enjoying the read on this book, and I just want to let our listeners know, because we are bumping up against the time here. I want to let our listeners know that Before the Birds Sang Words by Ken Bruce is available. You could get it wherever you get your books.
Amazon, basically.
Well, yeah, but something. Amazon. You can get
go to Amazon.
70% of people buy their books at Amazon. Okay. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. This is Before the Birds Sang Words by Ken Bruce, and a wonderful foreword by Brad Bird. And I know he jokes at the end of his foreword that you asked him because of his last name, but I don't.
That is not true.
That is not true. I know it's not true.
Not true. But it wasn't until he was halfway done writing the foreword that I realized, wait a minute, his last name is kind of perfect. Yes. And I immediately wrote him back saying, I hope you realize I did not ask you because of your last name.
But listen, I would say to the audience, check out Before the Birds Sang Words by Ken Bruce. It's all about Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room. It is really, I think, one of the most fascinating reads about Walt Disney and the early history of the Disneyland park. And it talks quite a bit about Disneylandia. And the miniature dioramas that he was doing and stuff like that. It's really absolutely fascinating. It's a great read. Check it out. You can get it on Amazon. And are you going to do any book signings anywhere?
Done one before, and I'm beginning to line them up. I will be at some event, some Tiki related event. I feel sad because I don't remember the name. Tiki Oasis or something in July.
Okay, good.
And then I have a nerd night booked, and I have a let me see, a Los Angeles Breakfast Club, LA Breakfast Club lined up, and I wish I could give the dates, but I don't have them.
Okay.
So those will be times where I just like, it's so funny because I'm basically like not someone who loves giant social soirees, but the idea of talking about this in front of people just fills me with pleasure and glee. So I can hardly wait to chat about it and give a little keynote presentation and then sign books afterwards. So looking forward to that. Yeah.
Awesome.
So I'm beginning to line them up. Yeah.
All right. Well, Ken, I want to say thank you very much for being on the Rock podcast. It was really a great 2-episode discussion about not only your career, but this wonderful book.
Thank you so much. I'm delighted to hang with you. Caveat, Dave Bosser and I, we go back a long time. So it's delightful to hang with you. It's been too long. So it's really cool.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun. I enjoyed having our lunch a month ago. I enjoyed these conversations on the Skull Rock podcast, and I look forward to getting together with you again soon.
We'll do it again. Absolutely.
All right. So as soon as I finish the book, we'll schedule a lunch.
Okay.
Then I'll pick your brain a little bit more about stuff.
Keep enjoying it. Thank you so much, Dave.
It was good having you on the show. Take care.
Take care.
It's time now for the Disney travel deal of the week.
But it's not going to be Disney.
What? Stop the music. Stop the presses.
We need that whoop sound.
I don't have that. I'll have to do that next time. Hold on a second.
Screeching tires.
How about that? That was the closest thing I got. It's
okay, here we go.
It's literally the movie trailer glitch. Coming this Sunday. What is it, Kristen?
This is a Universal Orlando Resort travel deal.
A Universal?
Yes.
What?
Nice.
They have a dining card promotional package.
What?
Yes.
Come again.
So now through February 12th of 25, you can book this. The travel dates are going to be November 7th through April 10th of 2025. However, the blackout dates do include December 20th through January 4th, of course. The available hotels for this include Lowe's Portofino Bay, Hard Rock Hotel, Royal Pacific, Sapphire Falls, Cabana Bay Beach, Aventura, Stella Nova, Terra Luna, Endless Summer Resort, Surfside Inn and Suites, as well as the Dockside Inn and Suites. And how much your food and beverage card value is will be determined by the hotel as well as your length of stay.
Okay.
So you can do 2 park 4-day tickets. You can also do 2 park 5-day tickets. They also have 3-day park 3 park 4-day tickets as well as 3 park 5-day tickets. These are all going to be park to park tickets that you can get as part of this promotion. And your dining card could be up to $1,000.
Wow. That sounds like a great deal, Kristen.
Yes, and this beverage card can be used at Universal Studios, as well as Islands of Adventure, Volcano Bay, City Walk, and your hotels.
Okay. Well, I like it.
I do too.
Seems super flexible and a great deal, especially,
a dining card.
Yeah, dining card. That's
Who
huge.
doesn't want a dining card?
Now, even at Universal, it's a great deal. So if you're interested in this Universal deal or any other Universal theme park resort deal, Or if you're looking to just go to Walt Disney World, Disneyland, or any Disney cruise line, in fact, including Royal Caribbean, go ahead, hit Kristen up via email and get her started on booking your next awesome vacation. What's your email, Kristen?
themeparksandcruises@gmail.com.
Skull Rock Podcast is made possible by listeners like you. We want to thank Randall Lynch, Spencer Wright, Lindsay Sky-Fay, and Joshua Volkert. Please support our show for as little as 99 cents a month by clicking the link in our show notes. Thank you for listening.
This is animator Rebecca Reese, and you are listening to the Skull Rock Podcast.
Your attention, please. Now loading on track number 1 for a trip around Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom.
Skull Rock Podcast.
All aboard.
Your main street to the world of Disney.
Well, there's the guy, Ken Bruce, part 2 in the can, and a great book. Dave, are you going to plug that book again?
Yeah, something I have to, I just absolutely am fascinated and thoroughly enjoyed this book because of the granular details that Ken was able to write about. Walt Disney's Enchanted Tiki Room, Before the Birds Sang Words, by Ken Bruce, and the foreword is by Brad Bird. It's out and available. It's on Amazon, Barnes and Nobles. You can have your local independent bookstore order it, but it's a great read, and Ken is a terrific writer. Aside from being a terrific animation artist, he's a terrific writer.
That's great. And I'd be remiss if I didn't say Before the Birds Sang Words with Brad Bird. That's all kinds of birds in this. So
yeah, I think that's coincidental, and I think that Ken mentioned that in the interview, but
I remember
it was the perfect person to have write the foreword.
Absolutely, I was like, boy, it's like chock full of Disney and birds. Imagine that.
There you go.
No, it's great stuff, Ken. Thank you for being on our show. We look forward to having you back in a future show because I know we just scratched the surface about your career, but definitely looking forward to that. Gang, once again, we're wrapping up yet another edition of Skull Rock Podcast, and once again, I encourage everybody to get in there and subscribe to our show wherever you find podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube, like many of you already have. And don't forget, next week we're going to announce our winners of Dave's new book. And Dave, pre-orders for your book are coming. I know you're going to talk about that here as you wrap up the show, but just make sure you click that link in the show notes to subscribe to our YouTube channel, to leave us those voicemail messages. We want to hear from you. Click the link, send us messages, follow us on all of our social media, Facebook, X. Dave and I are both on LinkedIn, Instagram as well. The show archive is up with over 200 episodes, proud to say, of Skull Rock Podcast. Check out skullrockpodcast.com. You can also find me on Aljon Go on Instagram. You can do that for great music, and of course, whenever we put up new shows and such. You can also find me on our my other podcast, Dining at Disney, with 2 shows every week talking about the Disney parks. We're still going through the news of D23 and all the food news you can muster with all these great food events going on at the park. Check out Dining at Disney podcast. Dave?
Hey, by the way, Did they announce any kind of new food concoction at D23 for the parks?
You know what?
Because they probably should.
Yeah, well, they have a bunch of new food. They've got new food events, new nighttime shows. They've got 2 new lounges going into Epcot, and they have got a few different things. I think they're going to open up new restaurants in Avengers Academy that they haven't discussed yet, as well as the new Pixar. We talked about the new Pixar Monsters, Inc. So I think there's going to be a new restaurant going in there for the Monsters Monstropolis attraction going in there.
Awesome.
So I'm looking forward to that. And Dave, you and I next week, we need to talk about how the Disney family is not up necessarily about that Walt Disney animatronic. I forgot to mention that this week.
I'm just going to comment real quickly on this. Okay. We can talk about it next week as well. But, it was interesting when they made the announcement, they said they had the blessing of the Disney family. Well, they had the blessing of Roy Patrick Disney, which is Roy O's grandson, right?
And the Walt Disney Family Museum as well.
Yeah, but some of the Walt Disney grandchildren apparently aren't happy about it. And, I thought about that this week, Aljon, and I thought to myself, hey, Walt had made Abraham Lincoln into an audio animatronic, and it was a huge hit. And it's an opportunity to bring, individuals who are no longer with us back to life for an experience. And as I said the first time, and I think I said this last week, if it's really done well, really well, I don't see any issue in it. I really don't. I know there's a lot of debate. People are saying they shouldn't do it, they should do it, whatever. But Walt brought Abraham Lincoln to life.
Yes.
Yes. And so, I wonder how he would feel about it, if he brought Abraham Lincoln to life, would he be, is he up in heaven shrugging, going, hey, why not?
I think he would like it. I think he would still like to be educating and, and entertaining people because he's a showman. That's what he does.
I agree with you. And again, it has to be really well done, and the script needs to be really, really good. It's sort of him imparting his wisdom and his vision and, some of his values and thoughts on immersive entertainment,
Exactly. Well, don't screw it up, Disney, like you did Wish. Don't screw it up. Don't screw it up. All right. No Uncanny Valley, Walt, for us. Okay. Let's make it real. I'm sure they're thinking about it and making sure that his legacy and making it real and the best animatronic ever is going to happen. But anyway, Dave, you've got the final word.
All right. So I just want to remind people, and I'm going to do this for the rest of the year, February 21st to the 23rd, the Animation You All Expo in Nashville, Tennessee. I think this is going to be a big deal.
It's going to be huge.
I mean, those Maniac brothers, the Bancrofts, Tony and Tom Bancroft are the evil geniuses behind this expo. Yes. And I think this is going to be awesome. So mark your calendars, February 21st and 23rd. Maybe this will be like a regional, animation fest.
I think so. It's going to be like a small animation con. It's going to be great.
Yeah, I think it would be fantastic. So mark your calendars, February 21st to the 23rd, 2025, Nashville, Tennessee, the Animation Y'all Expo. Also, my Tunes Behind the Tunes show is on Sirius XM, Disney Hits, Channel 133. August, we're spotlighting Colors of the Wind from Pocahontas.
Yes.
So I give a little background on that. And then if you want, you can there's 2 new books from the Old Mill Press. There's my new book, Find Your Happy Place, the 8-Step Guide to Boosting Your Creativity Through a Personal Retreat. And Steve Anderson, the director of Meet the Robinsons and Winnie the Pooh, his new book, Disney in Between, The Lost Years, 1966 to 1986. You can get author-signed copies now before the book releases September 10th. So you could get the book in your hands, a few weeks before the book actually releases if you go to theoldmillpress.com. And by the way, Steve Anderson's new book, we're going to have him on talking about Disney in Between, The Lost Years, 1966 to 1986. This is like considered, that period of time is like the dark ages for Disney history. Hardly anything's been written about it. And Steve has put together a 500-page book that does a deep dive year by year of what's going on at the company. Amazing. After Walt died and before Eisner, Wells, and Katzenberg came into the company. So he talks quite a bit about that and great interviews with people, and some of who are no longer with us. So check that out. Steve Anderson's book, Disney in Between, The Lost Years, 1966 to 1986. And of course, you can always go to my personal website, davidbossert.com. Check that out. We're in the process of doing a whole redesign of those websites. So that's what I got. So go out, have a fantastic week. Be kind to one another, and we will see you here next Monday, right here on the Skull Rock Podcast.